This is another episode of The Process where we sit down with an artist from the VFX and animation industry. Today we sit with EA Games concept artist James Lewis Vines. Currently working under Criterion Games, he's worked on titles like Battlefront, Battlefield, Need for Speed Heat, and many other AAA video games. We talk about how he got into concept art from a 3D background, how he approaches concept art now using Blender's grease pencil tool, world building, storytelling, and his feature in last month's issue of ImagineFX magazine. We do a bit behind the scenes and talking about his process. So yeah, hope you enjoy the video. Let's get into it. Hello.
Hey man. Yeah.
Hey man.
Great to be on the call with you. And yeah, thanks for asking. It's really cool.
You know what? As soon as I saw that Blender stuff that you did, I just thought, I just really want to find out more. So first question is, just talk quickly about your role, what do you do, and that sort of thing.
So I'm at Criterion EA, so I've been a concept artist there for just over 3 years now. And prior to that, I was a freelancer for around a year, and I was a concept artist before that for the National Space Centre, where I worked with yourself. So I should say, I initially graduated as an animator and then moved from animator to 3D generalist quite early on in my career, just because I think I found far more enjoyment in 3D modeling and texturing and shading than most animators did around me. And I thought it felt like a good progression. And then later into my career, my supervisors and things, and people basically discovered that I had the talent for sketching and painting. So I kind of got led into concept art very willingly. So it was quite a comfortable fit, and it's been a nice journey. At the moment, I'm at Criterion EA. I've worked on some really cool games. Started off on Battlefront 2, Star Wars, which was like dream come true project. And then after that, jumped onto Battlefield 5 and worked on the Firestorm mode principally. And then after that, I've been working a few other things, some things I can't talk about. And I'm currently working, I think I can say safely, on the new Need for Speed. I think it's been announced now. So yes, that's what I'm on now. But yeah, some exciting stuff coming out at some point, I'm sure. But yeah, it's been a really cool journey. Yeah, can't wait to see where it heads as I keep going with it.
So yeah, I guess this video is mainly about the feature that you had in ImagineFX magazine. Was it January's edition?
It's technically February's edition. It came out at the end of December and was in shops in January, just to confuse everyone. I've actually got it here. So just so there's no confusion, if people do want it, it's this one with Lane. Can't remember Lane's surname, but Lane Draws on Instagram, did the cover art, which is really, really cool. Yeah, so that was the issue I was in, which was really nice to get asked to contribute to it. And as someone who's read it for years, it was like, oh, what? Really? You want me?
Yes. So was that just they reached out to you just on socials or an email and just a casual, hey, do you want to be featured in?
Yeah, 100%. It was just checking my LinkedIn one day, got a nice message from one of the editors. They either had a request from someone writing in, or they themselves had sort of sought to have a feature based on Blender. So yeah, it was a really good fit. Really nice people there, and they kind of briefed me on a scene that was similar to something that I'd done, but that also had a new flair of design to it. So I went with a kind of underwater cruise ship.
Brilliant, man. So we do some screen share stuff?
We can do, yeah. So what I've tried to do is, as I live most of my life in a computer, I've gotten used to using, I imagine, have you used PureRef before?
No, what's that?
So this is PureRef. It basically sits as like a gray space window that you can move around, and then you can copy paste, add text. So I did that quickly, just so that for my own sanity, I could remember what order I did things in. So yeah, I thought I'd put this little studio for a bit of your reminiscence,
yes.
Jamie. So I worked on a few things there, then went on freelanced for a bit and worked for a studio called Pixel Toys in Leamington Spa, and I worked with them on Warhammer, on Realm War, which is a mobile title. And this was some of my EA Criterion. These are the games I've worked on that I can talk about. So these were some pieces of concept art for Battlefield 5. Mainly used early on to kind of get a sense of what the world was going to be how we were going to get squad gameplay to kind of work in a emotion-filled environment. So we kind of played around with loads of different things. These were some of the signed-off pieces that DICE were happy to kind of get thrown out as pieces of marketing. And then, this was another game we worked on, Need for Speed Heat.
Was that your piece?
No. That was Kaisel. That's all Kaisel, the
so
man.
Cool.
Really nice piece. After that, I've got the history of personal projects from probably the last decade. These were like my first personal pieces of concept art. I was going in and out of online schools, so I basically had to kind of retrain when I decided to become a concept artist. So I went through a few online courses, created this piece while I did an online course with Andre Wallen, who did a bunch of concept art for Force Awakens, and I think he did pretty much all the new Star Wars films in terms of contributing to the concept art department. So that was a really cool experience learning under him. And that was another piece that I did along with him. This was a piece that I did on another course with CGMA that was ImagineFX, I think, the guy from Blizzard. So it was really good learning under those people for a couple of years while working at a studio, because I could implement it straight away on what I was working on. That was kind of 2016 to 2018, and you'll remember this guy.
Love
Jamie.
it. Love this.
I thought I'd keep him in.
No, this is brilliant.
Let's start it with, I had an idea once where I like puns, and I thought, what if you throw an R in the word taxi cab and it becomes a taxi crab? I know, it's the real high-end concept idea there. But it was just something that stuck, and I thought it would be a good experience, because at the time I was still a 3D generalist, so it was a good experience to do organic modeling and hard body modeling and kind of photoreal texturing. So this was my concept that I did of the taxi crab, and then over probably a couple of years in terms of jumping in and out of the project, I 3D modeled a Ford Victoria cab from scratch, and got that into Substance, and did the same with the crab. And then I this was actually while I was at EA, I finally got around to rendering him and doing a bit of polish on it. After doing that, I kind of discovered my love for personal projects a bit more. So we have these things at Criterion called off the grids, where when it reaches the end of a milestone, a lot of the producers need to meet up and just gather resources, work out where people need to be over the next milestone. And rather than just leaving everyone to twiddle their thumbs, we get a couple of days as artists or as programmers to explore new tools. And the idea being that you share back what you've learned at the end of those 2 days. And it happened to be that it was Inktober, and the stars aligned, and kind of Grease Pencil had just come out, and this was 2018. I was like, you know what, I'll try it out, and decided to create an Ian McHugh replica in Blender, because he did this Mortal Engines piece, and I've been an Ian McHugh fan for forever. And I thought, I'll do it. I'll try and do it justice. So I just tried to copy the shapes, really. It was definitely not my concept. I had to kind of clarify that. It was a good experiment. I got a lot of positive feedback on it, and it was just a really nice thing to have done in that off-the-grid time. And I even got a thumbs up from Ian McHugh.
Yes, that's it.
That's what I needed, right? I was like, okay, it's fine. But the man himself is okay with it. I can get off my own case. I'll show you that one in motion a second. So no idea where the file is anymore. Somewhere on a PC I haven't got access to. But yes, this was the screen grab from the scene. And it was about a day, maybe less, of just playing around with the tool for the first time. But yeah, it was a really nice experiment, and great when the man himself gave it the thumbs up. But that was the first entrance.
I really love that about the Grease Pencil and the power of that 2D and 3D element to it. It almost brings a sort of a previous capability to a 2D drawing to sort of let's try a different camera here, and so it's
massively.
a very nice a married way of doing 2D stuff and then exploring it in a 3D way. I think it's ace.
And the thing is, as a concept artist, the amount of times a director will say, "Can we see what this looks like from behind?" And it's a really reasonable question. You want to know what something looks like all around. But if you do everything traditionally, that does mean starting again, drawing something afresh. Whereas if you've drawn it essentially in a hybrid way like this, you have that ability to just skew the angle enough to then draw in the bits that you couldn't see in the other angle, or even, as you'll see in some of the other pieces, kind of draw it in its 360 form first off, and then really be able to play with compositions later. So as with the Taxi Crab, 2 years later, I got hooked at the start of lockdown on this guy called Bold and Bankrupt.
Me too.
Yeah,
James,
lovely.
me too. I love the guy.
He is a hilarious guy,
Yes.
and he got my. I love to travel, love to go places. Obviously, none of that happened in 2020, so he kind of ticked that box for me. I binge watched pretty much every outing he'd ever had in ex-Soviet Russia, and got fixated on these monuments. Decided to do a few studies of some of the brutalist monuments. So I painted this study one evening of the Buzuzka. I don't want to butcher the name, but it's an amazing building. So I decided to, after doing a painting of it, I thought I'd give that a bash and relearn grease pencil again, because they'd updated Blender from 2.7 to 2.8, I think it was, and the changes were massive. Like the UI had been overhauled, and the actual grease pencil itself had been overhauled, all for the better. I'll open the scene actually, and this was the result. So basically, I kind of created a 3D base mesh. This was in Gravity Sketch, I think. So as we were talking about before, I used the Oculus to put some really basic geo together, and then sketched into it and created this little guy. And what was really cool is, you just really can get that sense of scale with such minimal strokes.
And can you do like lens changes, and like it's pretty much just having the 3D camera capabilities in it? 100%.
Like you can change your view. You've got your focal length, boom. And yeah, it's just there's so much freedom in it. And just things like changing your lighting. It's one of the things you don't think it's that big a deal. And then when you do play around with it, just the ability to like mess around with the lighting afterwards, it's addictive. It does mean like initially you do it for speed, but you can quite quickly lose hours just tumbling around and going, oh, I really like that shape in the mountain now. That acts as a really nice shape that leads to the character there. Or from a storyboarding perspective, or even from a concept art point of view, really allows you to play around with getting these different compositions. You could essentially storyboard a sequence using this, really, and then just paint character subtle details in later. But yeah, that was a really pivotal scene, really, because it was the one that meant that I felt confident going back in. So I decided to go back in and resurrect another personal project, Jamie. So I did these really quick thumbnails of like a really basic drone copter, because I think someone just managed to make a manned quadcopter at that time, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh, what if bikers were on quadcopters, man? What if that was the new generation of bikers? And I got really excited and just sort of worked up some of the thumbs as though there was like a biker gang stripping a Boeing 747 of its parts out of the sky. It was like a whole. And then thought, what if they had their own little drones that then caught the bits of luggage and stuff as they came out of the luggage hold? And I was like, that's so cool. And worked one of them up. I left it there. It never really did anything. Then my art director at EA saw these and was like, what would be really cool, just as a little fun side thing, what if you could work up this thumbnail in multiple styles just to sort of test your abilities, right? And being a person who always loves a challenge, I was like, yeah, sounds good. So I worked the one up like the others, so it was kind of like the guy going past, turned it into a military plane, I think, at this point for some reason. But then I did one that was like the Jamie Hewlett Gorillas style.
Awesome.
And then this was my art director just went, what if it was like set in the world of Adventure Time or something, with like gross out graphics. So I turned the quadcopter into 2 toxic donuts with worms sticking out of them. The guy riding it was a cockroach. And freeing flame children from a plane that was being sick. So
I love that approach of that idea to push it like, oh, wonder what it, just try it in different styles and look what you come out with. It's such a fun concept and project to sort of just play around with.
It was a really good refresher. And I'm really thankful to my art director at the time. I should name drop him. It is Kieran Crimmins. He is a very good art director, although his title has changed to creative director because he's that badass. I worked on those pieces, and because I played around with those quadcopters, I was, I should do another scene in Blender using these quadcopter things. So I made an air, sort of like a meetup place that was initially going to be a garage, but I thought, it'd be cool if it had a retro vibe because it's bikers. It's got that air of retro to it already. So I should kind of make them bikers and make it a biker bar. So yeah, this was the scene that I created. This was using Gravity Sketch to kind of get a really base, so you can kind of see it's a really basic poly mesh underneath. And all the guys and details were then sketched in using Grease Pencil. But this was the first time I wanted to test creating one asset and then duplicating it multiple times. This bike was really sketchy, but I wanted to create multiple versions of it. So created multiple versions, some of which had like little sketched guys with flailing cloaks and stuff. And it was the first one I wanted to test if you could get an interior working. It didn't work perfectly for this scene, but it's enough that outside you can kind of get the suggestion of a populated interior. And went with the Zed's flyby because of the Pulp Fiction Zed's dead baby. It's always fun to throw these little things. No one will ever care. So it was nice, and just like sketching this way just allows you to really explore a space as well. So
this one, is it, just to briefly touch on, like you start off with a 3D model and then you paint on top. Is there a way to show this before this layer of grease pencil is applied?
Yeah, I think so. So if I go to my grease pencils here, I've got a lot of Blender open. So here we go, yep. If I turn off on my grease pencil,
do you paint onto it and it sort of attaches the 2D form onto the 3D model?
I'll quickly try and demo actually. So I created this scene really quickly just before jumping in, where I create some 3D model. These were all created in Blender, and then you create a grease pencil object. And in your object, you can kind of switch to draw. And then when you're drawing, you can choose to either have it to 3D cursor, but you can change your cursor and it will draw where your cursor is. Or you can go to surface and then it will draw everything. Or it should draw. It should draw everything to the surface. For some reason, it's not playing ball. I know what it is. So there's an annoying thing by default. That factor is the offset. So you have to put 0.02. There we go.
And that will just sit it just off the surface. Okay, so the tighter that is,
the tighter that is, it'll stick to that surface. Yeah.
That scene is so cool. I love that whole concept of just the idea of it all.
I've got a couple of friends who want to collaborate on kind of building this as a Unreal demo, as like a real textured scene and everything. So my plan is to kind of go into some of the thumbnails I pulled out of that, like some of these, for example, and just work them up like I did these. So kind of got them at a point where they look relatively photoreal, and then some of the Hands at 3D, who I have luckily befriended, we'll take a bash at and seeing if they can build it in Unreal.
That's just the power of concept art, I'd say. So having that idea, showing a concept, telling a story just through, some stills. Like, I know that we can explore this in a 3D world, which adds another layer of awesomeness to the whole depth of the concept. Really opens up the start of something that you can really take forward and develop into an animation, a film, a short,
Exactly, yeah. And it just allows you to take people on that journey with you more than just presenting. Like, everything can start with a sketch, and there's that story that they say on the set of Force Awakens. J.J. Abrams did a napkin sketch of BB-8 that was just a ball on a ball, but he had in his mind's eye that it was just going to be this new take on a droid, and got enough people interested and driven with his passion with that idea that, you know, the team then went ahead and created an amazing design. And BB-8, not just an amazing design, but a feat of engineering, really. This is going to be a nice progression now. I didn't even plan this. I then did a Star Wars scene, Jamie. Oh my God. My subconscious was playing me there. So I did a Star Wars scene, and this was the result of talking to a couple of guys on LinkedIn who basically just messaged me after seeing those scenes and thought, these are all great, but how would you do it with an existing IP? Just as out of curiosity. And they sparked me being curious as well. I was like, could I do it with an existing property? And this was just at the point when Mando season 2 was about to air. So it was definitely in my brain to do something Star Warsy. So I quickly bashed a bunch of forms together, because they're, you know, iconic shapes that don't require any concept. You can just literally go straight in, replicate the forms that you've seen millions of times before, and just see if it works and holds up still. But yeah, this was the same principle, but this time I experimented with using the remesher to create the characters rather than drawing them. So in that diner scene, all of the characters are just multiple strokes painted at different angles to create the illusion of a person. But obviously with a character like the Mando, that's more difficult because it needs to be identifiably that character. So what I did was took some poses from Mixamo, imported them, did a remesh on them to make them really low poly, then did a bit of grease pencil on top of them. You might be able to see there, like the gun is grease pencil, these little elements here, there's some sort of detailing there, the cape's grease pencil, but the underlying body of it is just a Mixamo rig, and did the same with the TIE pilot here. But again, you know, this is not a piece of highly polished concept art by any means, but all of those forms are there so that at a distance they register as what you need, and if you wanted to paint it up, you could, and the shapes are there, you just need to render them up. So yeah, that was a nice little experiment. I think this only the whole scene took maybe 2 or 3 hours, which then allows you to create however many thumbnails. You know, this is my ArtStation post on it. I should say this is all in a fan art capacity as a disclaimer, so none of this is official. This was purely a fun thing on the side. But yeah, all of these compositions out of like 2 or 3 hours work, which normally 4 thumbs could take 2 or 3 hours. So you're getting all of that variety out, and the director could go, can we make this thing closer to that thing? I like the angle. Sure. You could do it all in the call and take the image. It's an exciting time. After that one, I got contacted by ImagineFX, and they wanted something akin to this diner scene. And I had this idea on my back burner for ages of a kind of underwater cruise ship. I love the deep sea environment, so I created this giant cruise ship, destroyed old pirate ship in the bottom, little submersible, along with obviously cloning it, multiple little submersibles that were coming off of the big cruise ship. And then just again created it like that scene where you've just got all of these different elements and you can play around with discovering your camera angles later. So that was published in this issue, which was it's technically the February issue of ImagineFX. So this was one of the quick props for it. Again, using grease pencil, as you can see, like these areas were all drawn on, giving you that suggestion of where the paneling sits, where the text sit, where the people are. The cool thing with grease pencil is you can kind of change the color of it as well, so you can have them as emissive as well if you want to change the shader.
Is that a bit of volumetric stuff in the
yeah,
stuff at the top?
It's still not great. There's a few issues where you'll get this kind of look like it's a cube, just because of how the shader works. Even though it's not a cube form, it'll technically render in EV as though it's a cube. So there's a few things that, you know, will hopefully get better over time. But I still haven't worked out the perfect way to get a semi-transparent material. I'm sure there are ways. That's the thing. I've not invested the time into getting that just right yet.
Did you design that yourself then, James? That whole, the design of it all?
Yeah, they were sort of, I call them napkin sketches now. They're nothing high end, but the idea is that they're quick sketches I do in Photoshop or on the iPad, and then I'll then explore them in 3D, because you also learn things about a design in 3D that you can't solve sometimes in 2D. That was like these little submersibles. I kind of based them heavily on a submersible I found, and then just gave it this TIE fighter window as my little nod to the Star Wars universe. But again, what's cool is these little people inside were, I think they were just these polyforms. So the way I'm approaching characters at the moment is I do this. I basically create a little man out of primitives, and then I remesh the man when I've posed these primitives in a position I like this, and then I bring them into the scene, and then get these kind of perfect silhouettes of characters in those positions without having to worry about rigging or.
Brilliant.
You can use the sculpt tool in in Blender to push pixels around really easily as well, which just makes things faster, and it feels like drawing still, because it's just like you're smudging the ink in the same way you draw things. And I took that same thing and created some marine objects, the silhouettes. There's just some sharks, a school of fish. You can duplicate one fish. There's the one fish. You can duplicate the one fish 1 million times on a particle system, and then stick it on a lattice and create a really quick kind of school of fish effect, or create the same shark multiple times, but then throw that in a lattice and give it a slight torque to it to mix up the shapes.
Can you click on these and just move them around as 3D meshes with that 2D on top?
Yeah. Everything in the scene is not locked, so you can move everything around really freely. As I said, I probably can't open that scene per se, but I can open the area of my website that I've got the approved video screen cap of. So that's the scene moving around, and each of these little objects is in that scene and can be moved around freely or drawn on. And as long as you do it on a separate grease pencil layer and then put it in a folder with the object, it will move around with that object. And yeah, it gives you that desired effect. I mean, I think a few of the fish in this one were grease pencil first, and then it was a case of trying to populate a scene quickly, and rather than drawing each one individually, it was faster to go 3D generalist a little bit on this one. To go from that scene, this is what I'm working on at the moment. So this was an iPad sketch from a few months ago now, of some little homesteads using storage containers that I had an idea for, and I just wanted to see how the workflow would go from a sketch like this and then trying to replicate it accurately using the grease pencil workflow as close as I could. And this was the result. So that's the sketch, and that was the grease pencil scene. And is then again trying to match the lighting from the sketch as closely as possible as well, and purposely going with really blocky forms, because the idea is that I'm screen sharing all of this as I do it. I'm screen capturing everything as I do it, so that later down the line I can sort of package it for people who want to learn it. And these are some of the compositions. Like using those designs, you can get these kind of compositions out, and it's just everything's
so cool,
the same as you've drawn it. That's what's so nice and refreshing. Like there's so many times in concept art you'll do the top, the front, the side view of something, and then someone will go, what does this look like in context with this mood shot? And you have to still make sure that everything's accurately scaled to how it would be in that environment, because otherwise you're selling something that's a false reality, you know? So having this kind of fast track of like, this is the sketch you saw, and this is it in that thing now that you said you liked it yesterday, and it's so refreshing, and you know that you've covered that base. You know you're being honest when someone asks you that question of, is this accurate? So I've got that scene open as well. So this is again using those people that I showed, where you kind of like quickly use the remesher and some sculpt tools to pull out a backpack, add a little gun with grease pencil, and yeah, you've got your lighting just ready to mix it up as and when, and you've just got the ability to full screen it. What if these two guys are talking about this guy having a smoke at his homestead? Yeah, cool, got that screenshot. What if it's like a mood shot from the ceiling and it's like nighttime? Yeah, cool, got that.
Oh man, that's so powerful.
Man, it's so nice. Just things like that where people go, oh, you want some dramatic framing, right? Like you want some contextual framing in a gritty world. Oh, what if you got like clothes hanging and then a stack of tires? It's like, cool, well, that can sit as your framing, and then you've got this guy in the background. So that's where I'm at with my grease pencil stuff right now. So the plan is to basically release the video that follows the full creation of this one. So this one's built, screen captures for both of those happened, and this is the one I'll kind of do the walkthrough for every step of the way. And then the idea is that people, because it's quite a familiar shape, people know what storage containers are, people know what a shanty town kind of looks like, they can throw themselves into how their version of it would go. And ideal scenario, it would be awesome for people to share their scenes and to create a mega shanty town, right? The thing is, Blender is so robust. I want to see how many variants of these people could come up with. What size shantytown can we make, like in this scene? So hopefully I can share that at some point soon.
Man, I look forward to seeing that. Such an insightful timeline, James, of where you've gone from, up to now. I just can't wait to see even more stuff.
As it's like personal work subject, this is kind of my long-term IP that I'm working on with the code name She. So the plan is for me to use all of this grease pencil stuff to inform a graphic novel that I want to create, which is a semi-art book. So you'll get like a piece of key art and then a couple of panels of graphic novel, and then another piece of key art, more graphic novel, just as a kind of test to see how that format could work. An art book that also doubles up as a graphic novel.
Sign me up. Sign me up for that. These like 3D comic type things. Is there a way to maybe have a Blender grease pencil version of a comic book?
I don't know if there's a better way to package it, but the plan was to release a graphic novel and then, dependent on the interest, maybe open a Patreon or something, so that people who really get invested in this graphic novel, if there are people who do, they've got the option to then open those files and explore the locations themselves. So this is a location in my graphic novel called Rigtown, and the idea is it's a decommissioned oil rig that's now become this sort of haven for refugees who live there, and I basically want to create this whole place in grease pencil. And if people are really interested in the novel, then it'd be cool to then give that scene over to them and they can take photos themselves, or the sky's the limit. I'm bringing people into a world of my imagination, but if then someone else's imagination goes, what if we explore the story of a guy who's one of the fishermen, right? And this is him out on his boat. And it's like the amount of cool compositions I can already imagine of like, oh crap, I've not thought of the small guy on the boat who lives on this thing, rather than the guys who own drones or whatever. It's just a really creative way of storytelling and sharing, and yeah, it's exciting. So that's the grown-up version of what I'm doing with grease pencil. The child-friendly version of what I'm going to be doing with grease pencil is a children's book, which is also essentially a graphic novel, but following a little character called Little Light who gets lost in the city and tries to discover what he's supposed to do. So that's the other one that's very work in progress. I'm currently writing it, not drawing it. So yeah,
and there's the family.
And there's my family, yeah, Project Family.
Yes.
So this is what happened as of 3 weeks ago. We were surprised with the early arrival of Annabelle. So gorgeous, I will be busy parenting for a while as well. But yeah, I managed to somehow churn out a painting of her. So
You just don't stop, do you?
Well, I wait for her to sleep and then scribble it down as fast as I can. But yeah, that is me personal work-wise, JB. That's me wrapped. And I'm sorry for waffling, because I always worry I go on for too long.
Not at all. I just love hearing about the artist's perspective, approach, background, ideas. So everything that you say is just so insightful, and
thanks, man.
Ace to hear, man. The direction and vision that you've got for all these ideas, I can't wait to see, to be honest, James.
Thanks, dude.
But yeah, I just want to say thanks so much for your time, James, and that has been...
Oh, no, not a problem. Thanks very much for asking me, man. It's been really cool and great catching up, and yeah, we should do it again.
It'll be great to jump on a call, man. I'm sure we will.
You take care, dude.
You too, James. Thanks so much, man. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that video. Be sure to follow James on his Instagram, Twitter, social handles @JamesSense. And looking forward to releasing our next episode of The Process, where we're speaking with Blue Zoo animator Austin DeRose. We're talking animation, his personal project, tips, techniques, workflow. That's going to be a great episode that was filmed last week. Look out for that video coming soon, and see you in the next one.